Okay, we're underway, and I would like to welcome everyone once again to tonight's webinar. It's called Cougar Country, and this is another presentation from Wildlife for You where we're going to try to teach you and instruct you about some of our favorite animals, and tonight's presentation is going to be all about cougars. Now, I will tell you there's been a number of people that contributed to this presentation. I'll go through them in a second, but again, sit back, relax, kind of take in everything that we're talking about. And when I do call for questions or comments, by all means, get your typing fingers underway. So, one thing that we always do prior to every presentation, we do give a little bit of background about each and every one of our instructors. We want you to know that we actually do have quite a bit of experience and education in wildlife. So let me introduce myself again. My name is Daryl Radijak. I am a wildlife biologist, a career wildlife biologist. I got my start, I got my degree in wildlife management back in 1992 in Syracuse, New York. But one of my first jobs was working at this place called the Appalachian Bear Center. It is now called the Appalachian Bear Rescue. That's where my love for large carnivores, the big, scary, cool animals, really began. And I did that for about 5 years, working with bears every single day of my life during that job. But then I started working for the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, and because of my experience, I was soon promoted to be the big game coordinator. So I went from managing individual animals to managing the entire population of bears, deer, elk, wild hogs, those big critters in Tennessee. Did that for about 7 years, and then the director saw something in me and he promoted me to chief of wildlife. So then I was over all wildlife in the state of Tennessee. Did that for about 5 years. Really cool job, but you're always wearing suits, dealing with politicians. And so what I decided to do is pursue a childhood dream of living and working in the Rockies. And so now I'm in northern New Mexico, still doing what I love to do. So joining me tonight is another wonderful biologist, and I will let Stephanie introduce herself to you.
Hope that my internet connection stays stable too. My name again, Stephanie Payne, and I got my bachelor's in wildlife biology from Oregon State University. My specialty is actually a one of a kind. It was created for me by the university, and I took way more classes in non-wildlife things to make it happen. But I'm actually an apex predator human-wildlife dynamics specialist. So hopefully there will be many more than me at some point in the future. But my primary wildlife involvement does actually involve apex predators. And I work with a group called the Wildlife Human Incident Response Training, and we coordinate very large training events where we train state, federal, and provincial agencies and staff how to respond to severe and fatal wildlife occurrences. So it's those cases where no wildlife biologist or wildlife law enforcement agent ever wants to be called out on one of those things. But if you ever do get called out on something that's a severe or fatal wildlife human incident, you want to make sure you know exactly what you need to do, and you don't mess up anything at all. It's a very high stakes, high liability, and dangerous position to be in. So as Daryl has in here, I've been a backpacker for life. I've done some solo hikes in the Rockies and in the Appalachians. My favorite partner to hike with, sorry, Daryl, I hate to say this, but it's actually that pup that you see in that picture right there. His name is Bandit. He is a 165-pound Anatolian Shepherd, and he absolutely keeps me safe all the time because he's kind of a grumpy boy too. So, but with that, I will go ahead and mute and hand it back to Daryl.
All right, thanks, Steph. Now, I want to I want to bring in two other people. They're not here tonight, but I will tell you that they were instrumental in helping devise this particular program. Dr. Sean Murphy, wonderful, wonderful guy, got his doctorate at University of Kentucky. He is now in the Southwest. He was a large carnivore biologist in Louisiana for a while, and then he moved up to the carnivore program coordinator for New Mexico. Right now he's in Arizona, but he helped me devise some of these slides. And then there's Mark Payton. You'll see pictures of Mark Payton in a little bit. He's a wildlife biologist for the National Park Service, not too far from me, up on the Valles Caldera. He's been working with cougars for a long, long time. He's had more cougar encounters than anyone I know. So all four of these folks have a lot of wildlife experience. You see, over 70 years of working with these animals. So hopefully that'll give you some, it'll give us some credence to what we're talking about. So sit back, relax, and let's go for the ride right now. So before we get started, I have one favor to ask of everyone. This is where I need you to get your phone or a piece of paper or something to write with, because I want to do a little test with you. So I'll give you about another 10 seconds to grab something to write with. Like I said, if you have your phone, you could type it in your phone just so you remember it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put something on the screen and you tell me what it says. So if everybody is ready, just let me know what this says here. All right, you got it? Everyone good? All right, if you missed it, I'll do it one more time, so just take a look. Just tell me what it says on the screen. Okay, that's all I wanted. I'm going to come back to this slide in a little bit, but thank you for participating in that. I think so too of those classes. So let's get started here with talking about cougars. And what we're going to do, we're going to start off, because I just mentioned the word cougar, and that's the animal we'll be referring to, but what's in the name cougar? First off, just so we're all clear, we are going to be talking about one specific animal or one specific species. It's Puma concolor. That's the Latin name, that scientific nomenclature. But this is the cat that we're going to be talking about. I personally call it cougar. Lots of people call it cougars, but it comes under many different names. It's also called puma. It's called mountain lion, catamount, painter. Now, these are just some of them. Just so you know, cougars, I was reading something earlier today. There's like 40 Spanish names for cougars, 20 some Native American names for cougars, and like 15 North American names. And so it comes under all these different names. It's all the same cat though, this Puma concolor. One of the reasons it's named so many things is it was so widespread, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. The one thing I do want to clarify though is this something we should call a panther? So if someone talks about seeing a panther, technically what a panther is a cat that falls under the genus Panthera. And there's four large cats that fall under that genus. There's the lion, the African lion, Panthera leo. There's the tiger, which is Panthera tigris. It's all throughout Asia. There is also the leopard, which is Panthera pardus. And then the jaguar, which is Panthera onca. All four of those are in the genus Panthera. So those are true panthers. Those are the large cats. Those are the largest cats that we have currently in existence. Those are typically what we refer to when we are referring to a panther. But then someone's out there, I know someone's out there right now thinking, oh, what about the Florida panther? Well, the Florida panther is not in any of those genuses. The Florida panther is actually Puma concolor. It's a cougar or a mountain lion. Now, one thing that always pops up, especially when we're talking to the general public, is they'll try to catch you. Well, what about black panthers? We have black panthers in North America. Well, here's the scoop, folks. What a black panther is, it's a melanistic version of either a leopard, which is found in Africa or Southeast Asia, or it's the melanistic or black version of a jaguar, which is found in South America and Central America. And so they're not typically found in North America. They're not free-ranging in North America. Now, Diana might catch me because occasionally we have a jaguar or two that wanders up into the Arizona, New Mexico area, but it's just one or two. For the most part, their range is Central America, South America. It'd be great if we would get more in North America, depending on who you talk to. But for the most part, panthers, black panthers or jaguars, they're not found in North America in the United States. So the cat we're going to be talking about specifically today is this puma or the cougar. And just so you know, there has never been a documented case of a melanistic or a black cougar. So just trying to clarify that because we get reports of black panthers all the time. And if there is such a thing wandering around in the U.S., it's somebody's escaped pet. So what I want to do first, before we jump into the biology of cougars, because I think that's a really important thing to learn as much as you can about the animal, there is a fairly large faction of people that literally think, well, what good are cougars? Why do we need to have them around? And there's unfortunately a big crowd that does not want cougars around. They don't see any specific need. But I will tell you, there's absolutely a very important ecological niche or niche, however you want to pronounce that. And we're finding through science, through more and more research that's being done on these animals, that they're so extremely important to the ecosystems. And so a lot of people complain that cougars will make, they're no good. All they'll do is kill all the animals out. Absolutely, they will kill animals. We're going to talk about that. But you have to understand when they make a kill, especially of a large animal like an elk or mule deer or anything, that death of one animal brings life to so many other animals. So you have small mammals that will scavenge off that carcass. You're also going to have birds that are going to benefit from that carcass, not just from the scavengers like the vultures or the eagles, but that carcass eventually, you know that it's going to have worms and maggots and everything else. That makes it easy access for a lot of the songbirds. You have plants that will benefit from the remains of that animal. And so the death of one animal oftentimes results in the life of many, many others. And so you soon see that circle of life. So cougars are extremely, extremely important to the entire ecosystem. And we got to make sure we have them around wherever we possibly can have them around. So with that, what I like to do is we're going to talk about the biology and behavior of cougars. Because the more you know about the animal, the more you understand its behavior, why it's doing what it's doing. And so, again, sit back, relax, kind of absorb everything we're going to say, and then hopefully things will click. I wanted to get to a point where you don't even think it anymore. It just comes naturally to you. So, Puma concolor, just so you know, that Latin name, concolor means one color. And so obviously that one color is brown or tawny. And I know you're looking at this picture and you're saying, well, there's brown and white in there. What we mean by that one color is pretty much the color of the whole body in that there is no stripes, there is no spotting. So it's kind of a one color type of cat without that striping or spotting. So that's kind of where that Latin name comes from. Now, how big are these animals? Mature males can get pretty big. You see here 135 to 200 pounds. 200 pounds is an absolutely incredibly large cougar. Females are a little bit smaller. They're what we call sexually dimorphic. So the males and females have quite a bit of difference in size. So females will range anywhere from 85 pounds to about 120 pounds. Here's where people don't grasp the size difference. Now, the cool thing with cougars and domestic cats is their silhouette, there are morphological differences, but their silhouette can be pretty darn close. If that domestic cat lowers its tail, it can often be confused for a cougar. But understand the sheer size of it when you're comparing a potentially 200-pound cat to a 15, 20-pound cat at most, there's no comparison. And so people that are not used to seeing cougars don't really get the full picture of how large these cats can be. So they truly are colossal cats. When it comes to a cougar's senses, their eyesight, their hearing, their sense of smell, everything is far and above what humans can do. To be honest with you, I don't know about I believe their eyesight is better, but definitely their hearing and their sense of smell is way better. Now, many of you have seen my bear talks. They don't have near the sense of smell as bears do, but by all means, you know how incredibly keen your house cat's senses are. They'll be sitting there, it'll be, I was going to say pitch quiet, but that's pitch black. It'll be extremely quiet, and all of a sudden your cat will react to something. And they hear things, they smell things, they sense things that we just can't comprehend. So they have extremely keen senses when it comes to being aware of their surroundings. Now, these cats are what we call habitat generals. So cougars can literally survive in any type of habitat. So they can live in swamps, they can live in the highest peaks, they can live in the coldest areas, they can live in deserts. They don't care what kind of habitat they're in. What generally limits cougars, where you find cougars, is their prey, their food source. And so wherever their food source or their prey items go, those cats will follow. And so they really don't care what kind of habitat, and that is called being a habitat generalist. They are also what we call primitive carnivores. And what that means, they eat meat. They live off eating other animals. So because of this, they're active year-round, unlike bears that are an animal that goes into hibernation. Cougars do not hibernate. And the thing is, like I said, they follow their prey source. And so, especially in the western states, a lot of the deer and elk that they're feeding on will be high up in the mountains during the summertime. And then in the wintertime, that prey source moves down the mountain into the lower areas. The cougar then follows them. And so because of that, they're always following their prey source around. Their home range could be extremely large, 75 to 150 square miles. It's not uncommon for cats to wander all over the place. And we've got wonderful studies and radio collar data that shows just how far and wide these animals can roam. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this animal being a true carnivore. And Stephanie, I swear I'm going to call on you, especially when we get to the second half here. When I'm talking about a true carnivore, and that's what these cougars are, it simply means their primary diet is all meat. They eat other animals. Now, sure, they can eat some kind of plant material, but for the most part, their entire diet is meat matter. And so, can anyone guess, what do you think, and this is where you can type, get your typing fingers ready, but what is their primary source of food? What animals do they typically eat? Ooh, good one. Really good. Ooh, Pat, you must have been in on this already. I'm seeing deer, rabbits, mule deer, ungulates. You guys, you're bio nerds like me, or you sat in on this class. If you look at a cougar's diet, about 80%, 75, 80% of their diet is typically ungulates. Now, ungulates is another biological nerdy term. It just refers to anything in the deer family. So elk, mule deer, white-tailed deer, moose. They have a hard time taking down moose. They could take down young moose. But 80% of the diet is those large ungulates. They'll also take down bighorn sheep or those mountain goats. So just think of the body size of all those animals I just listed. If a cougar takes down one of those animals, it now has food for the next 7 to 10 days or even 2 weeks. And so most of their diet consists of those larger animals. They kill one of those and they're good for a couple of weeks. Now, having said that, like I said, they'll make a large kill approximately every 7 to 10 days. And if it's a really large kill, sorry for that motorcycle. If it's a really large kill, it could last even a little bit longer. Now, keep in mind, large animals aren't the only thing they kill. They will also feed on smaller animals. So snowshoe hares, uh, sometimes they'll get porcupines, woodchucks, rodents, anything that they can catch that is alive, they will eat. Now, what about humans? Because there is undoubtedly a lot of people out there that are concerned about getting attacked by a cougar. So, do cougars eat humans? I am telling you right here, right now, that typically humans are not on the menu for cougars. Here's the reason why I can say that with confidence. I promise you, every single day in states that we have cougars, people are hiking in the woods, in the forest, in the wilderness, and there is opportunity for a cougar to take down a human. Oftentimes, the human doesn't even know that cougar is there. And so, if humans were on the menu for cougars, I can almost guarantee every day we wake up and we turn on the news or read the newspaper or look on the internet, we'd be reading about another fatality where a human was taken down by a cougar. That rarely ever happens. It does happen every once in a while, but for the most part, humans are not on their menu. Okay, hunting style. Actually, Steph, if you want to get a word in to describe the hunting style of cougars, I'll let you have at it. I'm going to put you on the spot.
I was going to say I didn't have any prep time there. So, well, like Daryl has here, they are ambush predators. A lot of people who have house cats are very, very familiar with the behavior and the stalking and very, very patient methodology that these cats will go through. They're very, very similar in behavior. So they're very much, by the time that they have decided to make their move, they've analyzed their position, they've watched, they've really made sure that when they expend the energy that they're going to need to potentially take down that prey item, it's going to be energy that they've spent worthwhile because they're very energy efficient. So again, they're very focused. They are very, very silent, and a lot of times they're going to come at things and try to go for neck and back areas. Daryl's got a great picture here. So their natural instinct is that they're going to go for one of two things generally. They're going to go for, like, this cat is going for the esophagus area. So what it's going to do is it's going to actually bite down and it's going to cut off the ability for that animal to really be able to breathe, and it'll exhaust it and deplete its internal oxygen supply. So it's going to be able, that's how it can bring down this incredibly sized thing. In some smaller animals, you'll also sometimes see where they'll actually go for the back of the neck as well, because the shape of their teeth is absolutely perfect for puncturing and shearing as well with the back of the neck kind of vertebrae. So, Daryl, I'll let you take over because that was very spontaneous.
You did perfect. You even knew what picture was coming up without even getting cued for it. Thanks, Steph. So yeah, these cats really take advantage of this ambush style of hunting. Now, I like making a comparison where if you think of wolves oftentimes will hunt in packs. Sometimes they hunt solitary. But when wolves are trying to take down their prey, they will run an animal until it's exhausted. And so I always equate the wolf hunting style. They're more like the marathon runner. So they'll isolate a bison or a bison calf or a moose or whatever, and they run that animal until that animal literally is getting ready to give up because of exhaustion. So they are the marathon hunters. Cougars, on the other hand, they do not, in fact, their lungs aren't even built for maintaining a long stretch of running. And so I equate cougars to be more like the sprinters, those 100-yard dash guys, where they will lie in wait until an animal gets close enough and they pounce. They're literally on it within a few strides, and they try getting it. And like Stephanie said, they go for either the trachea underneath to pinch off that windpipe, or they'll go for a bite to either the back of the neck or the back of the skull, and they'll try to get that animal dead and down as quickly as possible. And so they're just insanely efficient predators. Now, one of the things they'll do after they make a kill, they'll feed on it for a little bit and they'll cache their prey. And cache simply means they take it, they kind of hide it away. Sometimes they'll drag it to a rock outcropping, some type of tree. Just they don't like feeding in the wide open, and so they've even been known to drag some good-sized elk a considerable distance to get it kind of hidden and out of the way so they can feed on it in peace. So that's what caching is. But like I said, they're extremely effective predators and are really, really good at taking down these large animals. And obviously you see here a bighorn sheep. Okay, now, what I just said, understand that being a true carnivore, cougars are always hunting. That is how they survive. They've got to make a kill in order to eat, in order to survive. That's going to come in play in a little bit when we're talking about behavior. But just remember, they're always in that hunting mode. Now, one thing when you go out in the forest or wherever you go, you may want to know what cougar sign looks like so you know if there's a cat in that area. And so one of the easiest things for pretty much all animals is identifying their tracks. Now, there's quite a bit to learn about identifying all the kinds of animal tracks that can be out there. But cougar tracks or feline tracks are pretty easy to distinguish. If you look, cats and dogs will leave a somewhat similar print. They have 4 toes and a main pad. Now there's a tremendous difference. There's two primary things. In fact, I'll mention 3 primary things you look for. First and foremost, many people know that cats retract their claws. And so typically when a cat is running or walking, you are not going to see claw marks. So in this photograph here, that middle picture, you see the toenail marks from the domestic dog and even in the coyote. So whenever you find a track and you're trying to distinguish whether or not it's a canid, a dog, or a felid, a cat, if you see the nail marks, in almost every situation it's going to be a dog or some type of canine. Now, the one thing that I also stress people to look for is that main pad. So if you look at the top photograph of the domestic dog, the main pad literally has 1 hump to it. Now look on the cat, or look on the cougar. It has those 2 humps on the top part of its main pad. Literally forms the letter M. And I always say M, meow, it's got to be a cat. So those are the primary things. Another thing that people look for, and I can't draw it out, I should draw it out, is the space. You can literally draw an X on the canine tracks, whether or not it's coyote, dog, fox, anything. You can draw an X between the spaces of its toes and its main pad. But because the cat track is more oblong left to right, you can't draw a really good X in there. So here is going to be, if there's one take-home message I have for you today, Google is not always your friend. You can find lots of good stuff on Google because you can find wildlife for you and our stuff on there. But if you go to Google and you type in mountain lion track or cougar track, this is what comes up. And if you look at some of these pictures, some of these absolutely are not cougar or mountain lion tracks. They're canine tracks. With all the pictures that you see the claw marks on the top and in the bottom, the top far right, those are all canine tracks. But Google or Bing says, no, these are mountain lion tracks. Be mindful of what you find on Google. Because Google is not an authority. Google is a search engine. And there's a lot of people that put bad information out there. So just be mindful of the source of your information. Okay, going back to different kinds of cougar signs. Cougars can often make scrapes. It's where they literally scratch out an area and they'll pee in it. It's a marking station for other cats of their kind. They can even do scratching posts, kind of similar to how a bear does it. By the way, that's Mark Payton in that photo that I mentioned earlier today. Cougar scat is somewhat easy to differentiate. It's oftentimes very long and tubular, and it also has a lot of hair in it. Remember, these animals are eating other animals, and they don't digest the hair too well. And so when you find cougar scat, it's usually this very long, tubular type of scat, and there's going to be lots of hair. Now you got to be careful because other carnivores will leave hairy scat, such as coyotes, bobcats, and so sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to differentiate. But typically, it will have that hair within its scat. Another big thing to watch out for regarding cougar sign are kill sites. This is where a cougar has made a kill and it has cached its prey item, and it's going to be in that area to feed on. We're gonna talk a little bit about that. So this is a good segue. What we're going to talk about here are cougar encounters, because many people, if you're out west hiking and about, can get concerned about running into a cougar or having an encounter with a cougar. So what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about high-risk situations should you ever come upon a cougar. Now, there's certain scenarios you got to watch out for. First off, if it's a surprise, typically you don't surprise a cougar. They know your presence well beforehand, but there could be a situation if you're walking in a really tight canyon or in very thick vegetation and it's windy or noisy, you could actually surprise the animal. That will be a high-risk situation. Another situation is if you stumble upon a den that has all these cute little baby cougar kittens. That's probably not a good area to hang around in because mom's not going to be too far away. So don't hang around if you find a den site. Another one, again, this is that important one, those kill sites. When a cougar makes a kill, it's going to hang out in that area until that carcass is gone. And so you got to be very mindful of a cougar present in that area should you find a kill site. And then last but not least, dogs. Now, I will tell you, I'm not here to tell anyone not to hike with their dogs. I hike with my dogs. Stephanie said she hikes with her dog. Dogs can be a wonderful companion, but understand they could elevate the situation should you have a wild animal encounter, whether or not it's a cougar or a bear. So just understand the risk involved. Now, I've got a big black lab. Stephanie mentioned her Anatolian Shepherd. Beautiful big dogs that are very protective of their human partner. But there's a lot of people that like to go camping, especially if they go in the front country, and they bring their little Fifi dog along, which is great. These dogs are awesome. They have a heart of gold. They will try to defend their owner. But what do you think that cougar sees that little foo-foo dog, and what do you think is going through that cougar's mind? They're seeing a little snack right in front of them. So just understand that hiking or camping with your dog, especially if it's a little dog, could present a very difficult situation for you if you do have a cougar encounter. So the reason these are high risk, whenever you have this cougar encounter at close range, there's always that slight potential of it turning into a predatory situation. But fear not, because I'm here to tell you what you got to do. So, reading body posture. If you're hiking, you're camping, and you encounter a cougar or cougars in close proximity, understand what a cougar is going through. Remember, we just taught you about their biology. They're true carnivores. They're always hunting. Now, picture of your house cat. Your house cat is always at the ready to stalk something. And so cats are naturally curious. Cougars are typically afraid of humans. In fact, that's kind of born into them that they're going to be afraid of humans. So if they hear you coming, they usually go the other way. Now, because they are curious, sometimes they don't go the other way. And so any other action besides that hasty retreat, let your spidey senses start tingling. Just be aware of, hey, this isn't right. I'm going to have to deal with this situation. So here are some things that you got to pay particular attention to. If you see a cougar staring at you from cover, take notice. That's a really important thing to see. This sneaking or stalking pose, just like in the picture, that's a cat that's in that hunting style. That's how they typically hunt. That crouching behavior. Oftentimes you'll see the cats where their ears will kind of lay back. Another one is the twitching tail. Now, I do have some videos I can show later if you want to really stick around late. I can show you some videos of some of these behaviors. But you can imagine it, close your eyes, picture your house cat. That is what cougars do. And all of those behaviors are offensive. That is the cat saying, hey, I'm getting ready. There's something here that interests me, and so I'm getting in position. So just be very, very mindful of those behaviors from a cougar. So here's a really important part of this lesson. How do you react if you were to find a cougar that is doing any of those behaviors? So let's go through a couple of situations. Say you encounter this cougar and you're completely undetected by the cougar. The cougar has no idea that you're there. The first thing you have to do is wake up because you're probably dreaming. Cougars, you're not going to sneak up on a cougar. Like I said, their senses are unbelievable, and they will know that you are there far before you know that they're there. So odds are you're not going to be undetected by a cougar. So what about this second situation? What about those behaviors I just described, that crouching, the tail twitching? You see a cougar and you see it's in position and it's in that stalk type of mode. Well, what do? Easy. You make noise. You talk to it. You wave your arms. You throw a rock. You get the cougar's attention and say, hey, cougar, I'm here. Oh, uh-oh. Okay. I thought I lost my screen. You say, hey, cougar, I'm here. You talk to it. It's really important. Not many agencies or anything mention talking to the cougar, but I was just conversing with Mark Payton, who studies cougars, collars cougars, and every time he has an encounter with a cougar, as soon as he projects his voice, that is an immediate sign to that cougar, hey, this isn't one of my prey items because I never had a deer talk to me before. And so it's imperative that you identify yourself as a human. The one and only rule that is a must is you do not run. If you run, you risk the chance of triggering a predatory response from that cougar. Just like a cat or a lot of these other animals that will hunt, if they see something run, their brain is hardwired to immediately begin chasing it because that's potentially the next meal. So that is why you do not run around a cougar. You want to remain assertive. You literally want to become the dominant animal. So if you encounter a cougar on the trail, you got to let them know who's boss. You talk loudly to it, you shout at it, make yourself look large. If you have multiple people together, you clump up so you appear more intimidating. You become that dominant animal. And this is really important because there's a lot of pamphlets out there that talk about avoiding eye contact. That is a wonderful piece of advice if you're in a defensive situation with a bear, like if a bear is a mother with cubs or they're defending a food source type of thing, because a stare can appear as a threat. With a cat, you want to be threatening. You want to maintain eye contact. And so that eye contact, the cat there is trying to sneak up onto you, trying to get closer to figure out what you are. If you stare at it, you're going to slow that cat's approach. All the cougar biologists I've talked to over the last week say, yes, maintain eye contact. The last thing we want anyone to do is look away, to avoid eye contact, to look away, lose sight of the cougar, or turn your back on the cougar. That's a big no-no. So maintaining eye contact with a cougar is really important. And here is the reason, one of the main justifications. If you've ever seen people in India, when they're dealing or living amongst tigers, they wear those hats that have eyes on the back of the hat. That is because the animal does not like being looked at, and so it will stop an animal's approach. So eye contact is a good thing with these cougars. Okay, so what do you do if you're attacked? Heaven forbid. Odds are it's not going to happen. You're more likely to get struck by lightning. But what if you're attacked by a cougar? It's pretty simple, folks. You got to fight back with all you have. It's either your life or the cat. Now, I will tell you, it sounds intimidating knowing that a cougar can take down an elk. but humans absolutely terrify cats, and if that human fights back, you can successfully fend off that cougar. All these people were attacked by cats or cougars, and they fended them off. Almost every year, you'll see an instance where a cougar grabbed a small child, and the mother or the father beat the cougar up. And so, just fight back. It's not going to happen, but if it does, just understand what you have to do. There's no playing dead with cougars. Okay, I'm going to go through a couple more slides, and then Steph, I'm going to have you kind of help me out on the last part, the home stretch. One of the things, just so you know, one of the things that I've done over the last couple of years is this cougar prey study. Really interesting stuff. These are photos I took from the one study I was up on. This is in Jemez Mountains, the Valles Caldera, where we're doing this prey study. I think I'm just showing off where I live is actually what I think I'm doing here. But beautiful, beautiful country. What we do is we have these cougars throughout the area that have radio collars on them. And whenever we get a signal that stays put for a number of hours, for 12 hours or more, we know that the cougar has more or less made a kill and is on a kill site. And so we'll go hike in to find out exactly what prey item it brought down. We'll take measurements. We'll collect a whole bunch of data. But this particular prey kill site that I visited up on the caldera was an adult elk. She was probably a 500-pound animal that the cougar took down. We got there a little late. This was about 5 days after the initial kill. You can see there wasn't much left. But I aged that elk skull at 5.5 years old, which is a pretty old elk. And so we collect all sorts of data. We get to hike around, do some of the most amazing stuff. It's really, really cool, really, really fun. This was another kill site I visited. Again, that's Mark Payton with the beard. He's the National Park Service biologist who collared these animals. This particular kill site was only about 150 yards behind someone's house, but they took down a mule deer. So what we did is we put some trail cameras over it and we set a snare to capture that cat. In fact, Mark captured it the day before we were there, and we were just seeing if it's coming back to the kill site, but collecting all sorts of information to get some really, really cool stuff. Again, as sad as it is to see an animal die, remember that carcass now brings life to dozens and dozens of other critters. So, yes, the cat was still there. We did get pictures of it on the trail camera. There's her nice little radio collar. So really, really fun stuff. Okay, so now the hard part, and I'm going to bring Stephanie in for doing some of this discussion. Last but not least, where do you find cougars? I've been talking about cougars, telling you the biology, the behavior of everything. Well, where do you find cougars? So we're going to talk about cougar range. And right here, I will tell you that cougars are the most widespread animal in the Western Hemisphere, North America, South America. That red area is where you would find cougars in the Western Hemisphere if you were in the Western Hemisphere in the 1600s. So prior to the whole European invasions, so to speak, cougars were north to south. They weren't in the far northern parts of Canada, but everywhere in the States, Mexico, and all throughout South America, or Central America and South America. That is why there are so many different names for them. All the indigenous people had their own name for this animal because they were found everywhere. But then the Europeans showed up and they don't tolerate these large carnivores. And so the current range of cougars is this. Still fairly widespread north to south, but they are gone from pretty much all of the eastern half of the United States and in some parts of South America. And so this here, we're going to focus on the United States. This is pretty much, now understand range maps along the edges, people can argue all the time and they're dynamic. Ranges are expanding and contracting. But for the most part, this dark green area is where we find cougars in North America. Now we do have a small population in the Everglades. If you look at that light green, that's where those Florida panthers or Florida cougars are found. And then everything in the hatch mark is where cougars are expanding. We're finding more and more evidence of cougars showing up in those states. For the most part, they're not found in the eastern half of the United States. Now, we do know of some well-known travelers, because someone out there is bound to say, hey, well, I know there is a cougar that got killed on the road in Connecticut in 2011. Absolutely. That cougar was well documented as it traveled through those Great Lakes states. Photographs, scat, DNA evidence. They followed that cougar until it eventually died on the roadway in Connecticut. Another very famous cat that I'm very familiar with is a cougar that showed up in western Tennessee in 2015 and made its rounds in that state. Now, both of those cats, the cat in Connecticut and the cat in Tennessee, had origins traced back to these western cats. It was traced back to a population around the Dakotas. And so that's where those cats are coming from. They're these long-range wanderers. Now, if you look at that other point on the border of Alabama and Georgia, that was a cat that wandered up from that Florida population. That was back in 2008. And so without a doubt, range expansion is real. There's always a chance of a cougar wandering far and wide to go all the way to Connecticut or all the way through the state of Tennessee. Huge ranging animal. And so for the most part, they don't have any resident populations in the east, and they live in the west, but they are expanding eastward, and that's a good thing, actually. Okay, I'm going to talk real quick about, I told you I was familiar with that Tennessee cat. There's a little case study as far as the conformations in Tennessee. So back in September 2015, the first photographed cougar in Tennessee shows up in, I think since the 1930s. First documented cougar in Tennessee shows up in September of 2015. We figured when cats would get here, they would come from the western part instead of coming up from Florida. And so one shows up in that northwestern portion of the state. A week later, there is DNA evidence recovered from that cat. And it's a pretty good distance, but it took about a week's time for that cat to move over there. And then it kept traveling eastward towards the Tennessee River. And we were getting chronological photographs of this cat as it moved eastward. So we were literally putting pins on a map. Then it hunkered down in some really rugged territory around the Tennessee River, stayed there for about 6 months. Then it headed south. And it was last photographed near the southern border about 10 months, 11 months after it was first captured in West Tennessee. Unfortunately, that cat then disappeared, so we think it got killed or died of natural causes. I'm thinking it probably got killed because there's not a high level of tolerance for these animals sometimes. But that is the photographic evidence as it traveled. A lot of people said, that proves Tennessee has cougars. Actually, it was quite the opposite. That actually proved that they do not have a resident population, because one cat showed up and we had 9 photographs as it traveled of that one cat. If there were cats living there year-round in the east, not just Tennessee, but in the eastern half of the United States, we would have photographic evidence every single day from somewhere in the state. So it's a really good case study to show that the range is expanding. It's not here yet, but cougars, when they show up, we're going to have evidence of it. All right, well, what about the thousands of cougar observations that we get all the time from the east? And again, I'm very familiar with Tennessee, but you have reported cougar sightings in Georgia, New York, New Hampshire, all over the place, all over in the east. What are you seeing? So I had the fortunate job when I was working in Tennessee of being the cougar detective. I was the big game biologist, so a lot of these cougar sightings fell on my desk. And I want to thank Stephanie for helping me with a whole bunch of them while I was over there. And so remember, I was a biologist. I love large carnivores. I wanted to find evidence of cougars. I was looking for them, but I needed hard evidence. And so I need that crystal clear picture. I needed DNA I needed some type of scat, because typically you could pull DNA from scat, but I needed irrefutable evidence to say we had cougars here. That was always lacking, and it's still lacking in all the eastern states. And so I was told by by one person that I'm denying the fact that cougars live there just because I'm being salty. I wasn't being salty. I just needed that irrefutable evidence. So I'm going to show you some evidence we got, and Stephanie will recognize some of these photos because she helped me with some of these. So I would get a picture. This is not from the east, but I would get a picture, and someone would say, "Ha! I got a picture of a cougar." And I'd say, "Where is it?" And they say, "See, it's right there. We got it." I'm sorry, but that's not irrefutable evidence of a cougar. Someone sent me this picture. This is actually a picture, and they're like, "Ha! We got a cougar on our trail camera." I'm like, if you call that a cougar, you can't even see the raccoon that's on the tree there, but you're seeing a cougar that's in the bushes. And so, not a crystal clear picture of a cougar. We can't use that as irrefutable evidence. These are other photos again. They're like, "Ha, see, we got it. There's the cougar." You can't tell anything from that photo. More than likely, that might be a fox or something. But when you just have a shining eyeball and a vague outline, that is not irrefutable evidence. Here's another one that we were sent. That to me looks more like the morphology of a house cat. You have no relation to house of the size. This is not what can be classified as irrefutable evidence. Now, just so you know, in almost all of these pictures, these people were convinced they were showing me a cougar, but we could not make that claim. I received this as evidence of a cougar, and many of you know what that is. That is a simple bobcat, completely different species, shorter tail, different markings. Oftentimes we do get pictures of bobcats. Here's another bobcat that someone claimed to be a cougar. Here's another one. Now picture this photograph. You can see the short tail. That's a dead giveaway. It's a bobcat. But say that photograph was cut off. You could not see the back end. You could not see the tail. Can you see how people are starting to see a cougar there? Can anyone tell me what is one of the signs we look for when we're differentiating between cougars and bobcats? Very, very good, Beth. The back of the ears. Now, cougars will have a lighter coloration on the back of the ears, but bobcats always have this very distinct marking. They have, it's almost like black with white, and it's a very distinct, can't see it too good there. You can see the white tips of the ears on that one. And so a lot of times one of the first things we'll look at is if we've got a clear picture of the back of the ears, if it's that very distinct white marking, that's almost a telltale sign that you're looking at a bobcat. Okay, these are the ones that aggravated me. I probably was sent this photograph at least 24 times from people saying, "Ha, I got a picture on my trail camera." There are internet hoaxes all over the place, and people send these photographs. They'll get a photograph of a cougar from somewhere and claim it to be another area. Stephanie actually taught me the reverse image search on the internet, which is one of the most useful tools, because as soon as someone sends me a picture and says, "Look what I got on my trail camera," I do that image search, and then I'll find that that photograph has been shared 400 times from every state in North America and twice in Russia. And so it's really easy to discern photographs that are shared all over the internet. But this one was one that I bet you almost every state wildlife agency has seen this picture dozens of times. My favorite, though, is the Black Panther. This photograph has been sent to me probably the most of all the pictures, and everyone claims they got a picture of a Black Panther on their trail camera. This picture actually comes from South Africa, from a game farm, and it is probably the most traveled picture you'll ever see. Okay, Stephanie, you can unmute yourself because we can start talking about this. But I don't know if you remember this photograph. But when I was working in Tennessee, someone sent a picture and said, "Hey, I got a cougar on my trail camera." And usually, right away, we're saying, "Nope, it's a bobcat, or it's not clear enough." And this photograph came in, and it really made me think, "Huh, that's a that's an interesting picture." And so, if you look closely, it has the look of a cougar. There was not much to tell size. You can't really see a long tail, but it doesn't have the spotting that bobcats would have. And so I asked Stephanie to help me with this one. She was ingenious and she started doing some work with it. And she said, get photographs of other animals from that exact same camera. And so I contacted the person who sent me this picture. Like, do you have a picture of any other animals from that trail camera? He's like, oh, sure, I got some deer. So he sent me a picture of deer that was from this exact same trail camera. So the camera where it was positioned did not move. And so Stephanie was the one that taught me this. You could literally superimpose the two pictures together and you could see where I lined up the log. And so if you now compare that cat to the deer, remember a deer in this part of the country is only going to weigh about 100 pounds, 90 pounds. That now makes that cat about 20, 30 pounds at most. And so it's nowhere near the size of a cougar. So it was most likely a bobcat or possibly even a very large feral cat. But it definitely did not fall in that cougar realm. Okay, and I promise,
I'm going
Steph.
to interrupt you.
Okay,
Yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
because you didn't go back to that last picture. The one thing that was my favorite, I was really hoping you would mention this because it was the dead giveaway. There's a birdhouse back on a tree. And I can agree that sure that might be an owl box or a kestrel box or a large birdhouse, but unless it's made for something like the size of a pterodactyl, then that wasn't a cougar.
Yeah, and so there's little things that, as a biologist, we'll try to pick up on that the general public they know what they want to see, and they're making a cougar out of they're just dying to capture that photo of a cougar, and they kind of disregard these other cues. And so one of the things we do, we kind of dissect the picture, and we just take it piece by piece, looking at different things. Now, one of my all-time favorites was this photograph. Again, I was working in Tennessee, and someone said, aha, I got a picture of a black panther. And because black panthers are not native to North America, we typically dismiss it. Well, this person was adamant that they captured a photograph of a black panther, and they went all the way up to contacting the governor of Tennessee. And so the director said, hey, Daryl, I hate to do this to you, but can you kind of investigate this so we can show the governor that we did look more into it? And so I showed this to Stephanie, and I think the first thing was, where is there a black panther in this photo? So if you look down there, there's a picture of something. And just so you know, what's in the foreground, that is a cow carcass. There was a dead cow there, and the person thought this black panther killed their cow. And they set up a trail camera over their cow, and they caught a picture of the black panther that did it. And so that's it blown up. It's not very clear. It kind of has a cat-like outline. And so we're like, all right, let's take a trip out there to investigate. So we went out there, and in fact, Stephanie, if you want to tell the rest of the story, we went out there and talked to the landowner. Are you on mute?
Yeah, so we talked to the landowner, and you'll have I unmuted, but we'll when we saw this picture, like Daryl said, it could be kind of, it looks kind of like a feline. So we're like, okay, number one, this, if it was a cougar, it's also probably the first documented black cougar. So we were really skeptical when we went there. So we showed up, we did some measurements. The cow carcass was still present, I think, but it was not in any great shape. So we found some other measurable markers where we could figure out where the image was taken from, the distance that the cow carcass would be, and tried to use a 2D image to triangulate where this animal was actually at a time, which is, for the record, tedious and not super easy. But when we were able to do that, it left us with a lot of questions. And then finally, Daryl had this brilliant idea that the lady who owned this property lived right there. So we should probably ask her if she has any clearer images that we could analyze. Daryl, go ahead and take it from there.
Okay. So as we're talking to this woman, she's like, "Oh, do you want to see the pictures of the wolf?" And there's no wolves in that part of the country. And we said, "Yeah, we would love to see a picture of the wolf." So she took us to her barn where she keeps her computer, because everyone keeps their computer in the barn. And she started flicking through, and we were looking at all these pictures. And what it was a melanistic coyote. She thought it was a wolf coming in, but it was a black coyote, because coyotes are known to occasionally carry this melanistic trait, so they can be black. And so she showed this photograph of this melanistic coyote as one of the last ones, and we said, now I said, is there any other photos? The very last photo she showed us of that coyote was this one. Now, if you notice, look what's on the chest of that coyote. And look what's on the chest in this picture. So if you see that little white mark, at first we thought that was some vegetation possibly, but it's some type of mark on the chest of that animal. And sure enough, look at the mark on the chest of that coyote. They lined up perfectly. And so right away, even the landowner who really wanted it to be a Black Panther finally is like, okay, I guess that makes sense. So we hate to disappoint people. We're trying to find the truth, and unfortunately, people sometimes don't want to hear the truth. They want to believe their suspicions. So that was one of the more funner, most fun things. I don't think funner is a word, but that was a really cool investigation we had to do. So having said that, it was not a Black Panther. It was a melanistic coyote. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. Hey guys, you remember this? Remember we started out here and I said, write down what you read? Here's your chance. Write down what I said about this class. Go ahead and type it in. If anyone bothered to write it down. If you didn't, that's okay. I said the class is amazing. We think these classes are absolutely, I think so too. We think these classes are absolutely amazing. Okay, you guys got it. Actually, you didn't. I haven't seen anyone that got it yet. You guys are so close, but this is the actual slide, folks. You ready? We think these classes are absolutely amazing. And so you probably didn't notice, but there's 2 R's in there. And what I'm going to try to show you is your brain starts filling in gaps or starts painting the picture before you have a clear picture. So you start reading something and your brain's going to jump ahead and try to tell you exactly what you're reading. And so when you have a quick look at something, a lot of those gaps get filled in with what your brain wants to fill it in with. And so your mind literally tells your eye what you want it to see. And so there are tons and tons of folks out there that would love to see a cougar. I love to see a cougar. And oftentimes when you get that quick glance, your mind starts painting a picture of what you saw, and you are convinced that what you saw was a cougar. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people that have seen cougars, especially in the West. I know it happens in the West. But many, many, many of these sightings in the East, especially if they're near dark or just a quick glimpse of an animal, what the brain does it fills in and it creates that picture of the cougar. And people will swear up and down, I know exactly what I saw. And their brain, their mind's eye will tell them exactly what they saw. And they saw a cougar. But we have had no hard evidence of cougars in the East outside of Florida. We've had no hard evidence of cougars for literally half a century, many cases even longer than that. And so no bodies, no carcasses, no photos, no DNA, no anything. And so a lot of these are just simply mistaken identity. So with that, my friends, that's why there's so many mistaken identities. You get that quick glimpse, and you're like, Did I just see what I think I saw?" And you start painting that picture. Did anyone catch the cat that ran across the road? I hope you did, because I worked hard on that slide. But and again, I know people have seen something, but since we don't have any physical evidence, oftentimes it's a case of mistaken identity. It's a bobcat, it's a house cat in low light conditions or at a great distance. Unfortunately, we just haven't had evidence of cougars in that eastern half of the United States. So let me summarize, and then I'll answer questions. And I do thank you for sticking around, Steph. I know you had stuff to do. You had a long day. But to summarize, their range. Cougars are found, they're primarily a western species in the United States right now. They are expanding eastward. So all throughout the Midwest, cougars are becoming more and more prevalent. They're wanting to document breeding in some of these Midwestern states. Many of them haven't documented that. But we've even had a cougar venture all the way to Tennessee, venture all the way to Connecticut. There are some long-range wanderers that take place. But for the most part, the breeding population of cougars is in the western states. They are true carnivores. They're very efficient predators. They can kill amazingly large animals. Fortunately, humans are not one of those large animals that they focus on. And in the case of a cougar encounter, don't panic. That cougar just is trying to figure out what you are. So just make sure you make yourself known that you're a human. Stand your ground, yell at it, talk to it, wave your arms. Let that cat know that you're in charge. And in almost every situation, that cat is going to wander off. So do got to give photo credits. Greg Harvey gave me a bunch of photos. Stephanie gave me a couple of them. Always got to thank my photographers, because my presentations would be garbage if I didn't have good pictures. I'm going to answer questions in a second, but mark your calendars. We have a brand new presentation coming up 2 weeks from tonight. Looking forward to this. Very similar to today's, but instead of talking about Cougar Country, we're going to be talking about Grizzly Country. I've done a number of talks on different bears, the different species of bears in North America, but I haven't done one specifically on brown bears or grizzlies, quote unquote. And so if you're interested in learning more about grizzlies, it'll be a similar concept. We'll talk about biology, behavior. What do you do? What do you do with motorcycles outside your window? But join us in 2 weeks if you want to. That'll be a good one. That's a brand new one, so no one's seen that one yet. So tell your friends. But follow along Facebook. We do have a website that actually Stephanie designed. Thank you, Steph. Our Facebook page and Twitter, Trish Stevens designed the Twitter page. Thank you so much for doing that. And with that, I will leave it here. Thanks, Stephanie, once again for joining me, helping me out. If you want to stick around, you can. But if not, I will be answering questions for as long as you have them. So now's your, I see Stephanie was answering questions as we went, but any other
Yeah.
questions that you may
Well,
have?
I wanted to add in before you start answering everybody else's, and I'll probably actually bail after I do this. But so we have one comment that whenever it was on your slide that said to, wave your arms, talk to the cat, to throw stones. It is important to note, like Daryl had mentioned, you want to look big, you want to look scary, you want to look like something that's not an easy prey. If you have stones on like a ledge near you because it's a bluffy area, that's great. Grab something and start chucking it at the cat. But the one thing you don't want to do is bend over and expose the back of your neck to the cat. You're making yourself look smaller, and you're exposing a vulnerable area, and you're losing eye contact. So just keep that in mind. But like he said, the number one instinct that you're going to have is to turn around and run. And that is absolutely the thing you don't want to do. So with that, I thank you all for coming. Daryl, I'm going to try to sit in on your grizzly one, so make sure I know about that one before it hits.
Okay. Thanks for joining in, stuff, and I'll let you talk a whole lot more whenever you want to talk. Just always interrupt me because I do appreciate your input, and you know a lot more about these encounter situations than I do. So, all right. If anyone has questions, start asking away, and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay. Evelyn says, "Do they digest the bones of their prey? Are the wanderers male or females? Do cougars use wildlife corridors?" Okay, very good series of questions there, Evelyn. Um, yes, they're extremely efficient at digesting the bone material, and they will eat. It's crazy how they eat everything. Oftentimes, there's only a few scant pieces of bones left, but they have incredible bite force. Now, the cougar doesn't have as powerful of a bite force as a jaguar, but they do have tremendous bite force, and they will grind these bones and chew the bones, and they digest those bones. You can see some bone fragments in some of their scat, but it's amazing how much of the carcass they will eat. And so any of those small bones will just get chomped away. And it's yeah, it's quite amazing that they will actually eat some of the bone material. Um, are the wanderers male or female? Typically, in almost every situation, the big wanderers are males. They're seeking new territory. Whenever a cat comes of age, it has to find its own territory. And young males are not tolerated by other males. So the other males could kill that cougar or they kick him out of the territory. Now, if you're a male and there's a young female that wants to hang out in your territory, you're like, oh, yeah, this is great. But they don't tolerate young males. So the young males oftentimes get booted from their territory and they go on these long walks looking for their other territory or a territory to call their own. What was so interesting is the cat that showed up in Tennessee, they did get DNA evidence from it, and it appeared, well, the DNA evidence came back as a female. So that was a long distance wanderer from a female, but that is atypical. Typically, it's a male that does those long wander. All right. And your other question, do cougars use wildlife corridors? Yes, absolutely. Now, it's not because the cougar is using that corridor to travel a long way. It's typically because its prey item, the elk, the mule deer, the pronghorn, those animals that tend to use these long distance travel corridors, they move up and down those corridors, and a cougar will simply follow along with its prey item. Okay, Pat says you talked about cougars going for the jugular, but here the female is small and grabs the rump to haul in down first, leaving 5 knife slices each side of its rump. Is that common too? No, it's not common. Typically, the cat goes for the forward part of the animal, the neck, the head, the base of the skull. I will tell you, canines or wolves or coyotes or even sometimes feral dogs, when they take down an animal, they go for the rear end. And so you oftentimes can differentiate between what killed an animal by the bite wounds. And so the cat, for the most part, is going for that neck area. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that a cat will always end up at the neck. If there is a struggle, if the cat goes for the neck and that animal breaks free, the cat is just looking to latch on to anywhere, and it could grab the rump. It's just hanging on for dear life at the time, trying to get that prey item down. But typically, when they go for the kill, they're going to be towards the front of the animal. But by all means, they can absolutely grab the back end if they lose grip or they miscalculate. And so you can get these artificial or these wounds in other parts of that animal. But usually the death bite is going to be towards the front of that animal. Okay. Lori says, how long do kittens stay with their mother? Does the male do any of the child rearing? Kittens are very much like bears, Lori, in that they will stay with the mom for at least a year and a half, or about a year and a half. And then at that time, whenever the mother is getting ready to breed again, so if she's on a 2-year cycle, she's not going to want her offspring around if she's going to be attracting these large males. So about that year and a half time period, if she doesn't cycle again, maybe her offspring stays with her a little bit longer, but 2 years is about the max that her offspring will stay with her. Now, having said that, those kittens are almost full grown. They will gain weight, but by a year old, they're really, really good size. So sometimes it may even be difficult to differentiate between the mom and one of her offspring. And you've probably seen photos, you've probably seen some internet videos of 4 or 5 cougars walking through town or gathering around a carcass, and everyone, well, some people think, oh, they hunt like the lions in Africa in a big group. No, that's a mom and all of her offspring. Her offspring are really old though, like a year and a half old, so they're fairly quite large. But typically, if you see them all at once, there'll be one that's a little bit larger than the rest, and that's the mom. And no, the male does not do any of the child rearing. One of those deals where he does his business and then he's done. Is there a particular season that cougars mate? Good question, Diane. Um, I wish Stephanie was still here. Their mating season, remember, it's going to correspond so that they are born. Those cubs are always going to drop somewhere around the springtime because that is when the most abundant food sources are available. And so typically, and I'm so embarrassed about this because I don't know the exact time frame when they're doing the mating. I think they're doing a lot of the mating late summer, or around the summertime, because they do have a longer gestation period. It's not quite as long as a human, obviously, but let me get the exact dates because I don't want to tell you the wrong months. But I do know that they're going to be giving birth sometime in the spring or early summer when that green up is coming up. I'm embarrassed, Diane. Thanks. Oh, Rick has a great question. Rick says in some places like southeast Arizona, don't cougars and wolves live in the same area and compete for the same food sources? Absolutely. Southeast Arizona, just in case you don't know, we not only have cougars around here, but we also have Mexican wolves. They're gray wolves that are just a different subspecies, little bit skinnier than a typical timber wolf that you're used to seeing in Yellowstone, Canada, but they're still gray wolves. So wolves and cougars do live in the exact same area. They kind of occupy a very similar niche in that they both eat those large ungulates. They'll take down deer. They do have different hunting styles, but the thing with apex predators, and both cougars and wolves are apex predators, their populations are really, really small compared to prey populations. So where you may have 5 deer, 10 deer per square mile, you might have 1 cougar per 20 square miles. Same thing with wolves. There's only about 120 Mexican wolves in that Arizona, New Mexico area. And so the apex predator populations are so much less dense that the competition for food, it absolutely takes place. In fact, what's really, really interesting is oftentimes when one of these large animals makes a kill, other animals sometimes fight for it. And I'll tell you about some situations I know. Some of the cougar studies that we've done here in northern New Mexico, excuse me, they'll show where a cougar has made a kill. In fact, I know of a bighorn ram that was taken down by a cougar. And literally within a couple hours, a black bear had moved in and claimed that carcass. It's called, what is it? Necroparasitism. And that's not the right word. I'll think of it. But literally what it involves is as soon as one animal makes a kill, another animal will claim that carcass. And what they're finding out is if you have like a high bear population or a high wolf population, and a cougar makes a kill and it gets pushed off its carcass, is going to make another kill. So the frequency of the predation for a cougar is much higher when there are other apex predators around. Typically, they don't run out of food, but they may have more of an impact on the prey species if they have to increase the rate at which they make kills because they're sharing it with all these other apex predators. Katie, thank you so much. 92 days. So they may be mating in the fall then, if it's 92 days, because they'll be given fall or winter, because they'll be given birth in like I said, early spring. So thanks for looking that up, Katie. All right, Diana says she visited that park. I don't want to pronounce it wrong. Maderas del Carmen, a national park in Mexico. It adjoins Big Bend, and the wildlife manager shows us a letter love. After that time, I started seeing more letter loves and some hunting ranch in Mexico, but I have a question. I'm not following. What do you mean by the letter love, Diana? Yeah, I'm not exact. I've never heard that term before, or love letter, or letter love, whatever. Um, I have not been exposed to that, so I can't answer you as far as what they're referring to. Let me, if you could respond, I'll go to Pat's question. It says, do cougars specialize more in rock cliff areas? It depends where you're finding them. In the Southwest, where there's a lot of rock cliff areas, yeah, those are great sites because they're wonderful ambush points. If they can get up high and they can know where one of their prey items may be walking by, so they'll have the advantage of height, seeing them coming, of hiding in those rock cliffs, they're fantastic ambush points. Having said that, you have cougars all throughout the Rocky Mountains that will be in the trees, hiding under the lower boughs of pine trees. And so obviously everything depends on what habitat you find them. If you're in a deserty area, by all means, they'll be in those cliff sites. If you have a forested area, by all means, they'll use whatever available ambush sites you have there. Kleptoparasitism. Uh, Thank you for looking that up. It was on the tip of my tongue. I couldn't remember the name. Just so you know, that study that I showed you pictures of, where we're examining those those kill sites. We're also doing a side study on kleptoparasitism, where a cougar would make a kill up in the Jemez Mountains, and then a bear of some sort would come and push it off that carcass. And so a lot of that was looking into the effects of wildfire when food sources may have gotten more limited, and what the impact was regarding kleptoparasitism, where a bear's food sources may have run dry. They're then scavenging some of the carcasses from the cougars. So interesting stuff. Vegetation clusters that cougars urinate. Yeah, the one picture I showed, maybe we're talking about the same thing here, but those scrapes that they'll do, oftentimes there's going to be a bush or something that they will urinate on. It's literally, I don't know why they select what they do, but soon as one or two cats mark that area, it then becomes this community marking post. And all the cats in the area, and it won't be a lot, because remember, cat density is really low. So it won't be like dozens and dozens of cats. But whatever cats could wander in that potential area typically find these same scent posts to leave their calling sign. So oftentimes it's a female letting a male know that she's in heat. She'll urinate in that area. Oftentimes it's a male marking its territory to the other males saying, stay out of my territory or I'll kick your butt. And so I wish we knew more about animal communication, especially olfactory, the smelling aspect of it, because they communicate in ways that we can't even comprehend. Thanks, Katie, about the pulses. Yeah, and so remember, like I said, what in lots of classes you come to find out there's a lot of similarities between animals, and the optimum strategy is to try to give birth when your offspring has the highest likelihood of surviving. And so that's why most animals are hitting that springtime as the birth or early summer, to drop their offspring, because they know for the next 6 months or so there should be ample food sources that they could feed their young. But that's interesting about throughout the year. I didn't know that, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. I'm more of a bear guy. That's why I wanted Stephanie here. All right, we have gone about an hour and a half. And just so you know, folks, I have videos. I have lots of videos about cougar behavior. I teach other classes about like trail safety, cougar encounters. So keep an eye out on the Facebook page when we do those, because I know there's a lot of angst with people potentially running into a cougar and what do I do? And a lot of the videos I have are really cool, interesting videos that show the reaction of those cougars. So keep an eye out on the Facebook page whenever I do another trail safety. The next class I do have coming up though is that grizzly class, and I hope to see you there. That'll be a good one. I specialize in bears. I specialize mostly in black bears, but I'm anxious. I can't wait to do that grizzly class because there's a lot of people like myself that love grizzlies. So I think I got almost all your questions. If you have any other questions, you can always text me. You can email me, ask me a question on the Facebook page. Remember to like the Wildlife for You Facebook page. Follow along. You guys are awesome. I love teaching this stuff, and it's great to have people interested in learning more about wildlife. So I hope you all have a great night. I will send the recording so you can watch this class as many times as your heart desires. But thanks for participating, folks.